Hi, my friends. Welcome to the Grow There with Cheria podcast. So last week, I got to hang out with some former colleagues, and I hadn't seen them in years. And it was like a giant love fest. We were so excited to see each other. Well, I was so excited to see them. And so we're catching up. We're talking about former colleagues and friends that we've worked with. And I bring up one of our former colleagues. I say, I see her all the time because she is so responsive to all of my B reels. If you don't know what B reel is, it's a social media app that I think of it more like a diary of your life. So you take a picture every day and whatever. I love it so much. But if you want to join me on B reel, join me on B reel. Anyways, our former colleague is always supportive in my be real, and it feels so good. And I was saying it just really makes me feel like we all have hype men, but we have to keep an eye out for them. And then my former boss says, "Oh my gosh, she's like Steve." And he says, I guess he does some uses Strava, maybe a running app. He's like, every time I complete my workout or complete my run, there's this guy, Steve, who likes every single one of my workouts. And so we started talking about how everyone needs a hype man and what a privilege it is to be a hype man for someone else or a hype woman or whatever you want to call them. But I got to say, our guest today is someone where I genuinely feel like I hope she feels like I'm her hype woman because I because I am in my heart. I like every single one of her posts without fail. I love what she is doing. I'm such a fan, and I hope you will be too. Lindsey Stanberry is the founder and CEO of The Purse, which is a newsletter first women's media company. She spent the last decade working for some of the biggest brands in digital media, including her last role where she was the executive editor at Fortune. No big deal, right? No big deal. So before joining Fortune, she was the deputy managing editor at CNBC Make It and CNBC Select. And she also worked at Refinery 29, where she launched the work and money vertical and ran Money Diaries. She is also an author. She wrote the book Money Diaries, Everything You Want to Know About Your Finances and Everyone Else's. I'm such a huge fan of Lindsay's, and I'm so grateful to call her a friend. So without further ado, it is time to grow there with Lindsey Stanberry. Hello, Lindsay. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. This is so fun.
It is so fun. I was actually thinking about we have only met in person twice.
Yeah.
And the first time we met, you were hosting a panel that I was on for at Advertising Week,
Right.
and I was on my way out of my job there and going to start my business. And then the second time we met, we were also at a conference and you were on your way out of your job at the time. And I was just thinking about how, this podcast is about the intersection of work and life and all of those
Yeah.
things, but how both times that we've met have been for each of us a time when we were kind of disrupting our lives. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. And both like very publicly on stage pretending things
yes.
are normal,
Yes.
which is
That's
like
so
no
funny.
easy task.
No, oh my gosh, not at all, not at all. Well, I've already shared all your accolades about like just all the things that you have done. You're such an impressive human. And
You.
for people who are listening for the first time, we're really here to have a conversation. I'm here to hear a story from you about a time when something in your personal life really impacted your professional life or vice versa. And this is all just coming from kind of a belief that some of the greatest growth of our lives takes place when work and life intersect. And so I'd love to just get you started with telling me a story and then we'll talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot. Um, it's interesting because I'm not someone who in my 30s and 40s has been, like, afraid to, like, mix my personal life and my professional life.
Mm,
Um, Going in like, after I had my son, like, I went back to work, like, very determined to, like, be open about,
mm,
like, all the challenges. Sometimes I think for,
yeah.
like, better or worse. So I was thinking about this a lot, because the 2 are so blended, and I think about them a lot. But I think the biggest change has been in the last year, as you were saying, when we met up the second time I was leaving my full-time job where I was executive editor at Fortune, and doing the absolute insane thing of, like, not having anything else lined up,
Mm,
which obviously had a huge impact on my personal life because it took,
yeah.
a big hit on my family's personal finances, and I had been, like I had been earning more than my husband at the time, so I was really nervous about how all of it would, like I mean, there was just so it was so it's, like, overwhelming to leave your job, even if you're going to a new job, but I had
Yeah.
decided that I didn't really wanna go back full-time anywhere, and as a mother, I was really nervous about people thinking that meant that I was, like, leaving my career behind, that I had, like, lost my ambition or something like that.
Mm,
Um, and then I was worried about how the dynamics would change with caregiving. Um, and would I be, like, relegated to some role as, like, a stay-at-home mother, even though that wasn't the plan?
yeah.
So it's been a really interesting year. And, like, in so many ways, like, it's amazing and my life is so much better. And then in other ways, it's like, oh my God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Um, because the plan was never to be a stay-at-home mom, and, so much respect for people who choose to, stay home while their kids are young or not young or whatever. It just wasn't the right
Yeah.
path for me, in part financially because you do need to earn an income, and contribute to our household. That's always been really important to me. Um, but I also knew I wasn't ready to, like, go back in-house someplace. I couldn't find the right job, and so I decided to start my own publication, which is crazy,
Yeah.
and
It's
freelance.
amazing. Ugh.
And, I think that people think with freelancing and having clients and working for yourself, you get a lot more flexibility.
Mm,
And to a certain extent, yes, but in another way, no.
mhm.
Because you're
Yeah.
really beholden to a lot of different people's schedules, and suddenly I have 4 email addresses and am in more Slack channels than, it makes sense, and, um, you don't get paid time off, and you don't get health benefits, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time trying to navigate that, and so I think that leaving my job was a huge professional change, but it's also been a big personal change, and we're all
Yeah.
adjusting to it. But then there's, like, great things. We're like, yeah, you're right. I do control my own schedule. And so last week was back to school. Um, and I was able to plan that so carefully and thoughtfully
Mhm.
and be able to be there for my kid when he was done on the first day of school and to just not stress about it.
Yeah.
In the same way that I've had to in past where employers don't kind of understand why
Yeah.
after an entire
Yeah.
summer off, you need another week off to get your kids back to school.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Gosh, I know. It's so much work. It's so much I'm not a mom, but watching all the mothers in my life and fathers
And
coordinate,
fathers. Yes.
it's just so many moving parts.
It's
So
so
many
many
moving
moving parts. I'm not sure that there's a good solution for it. You just kind of
I
have to
know.
power through
I
and
know.
hope that employers understand that it's only a
Yeah.
couple of days every year.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, you know, you quit your job with no plan
No.
and then started the purse, which is
Yeah.
incredible. And anyone who is first of all, I just have to geek out for a second because when you started Money Diaries, when did Money Diaries start
We
with
launched
Refinery?
Money Diaries. It was either winter 20 I think it was I think it was winter 2016.
Okay. Yeah. I remember stumbling upon Money Diaries and thinking that it was the best thing I've ever experienced. Like, I always wanted people to be talking about money, and
Yes.
I was always so, like, confused why we had these hidden lives, you know? And
Yeah.
so, when I found out that you started that, I was like, "Oh gosh, she has no idea the impact that she had on my life just to be able to to be exposed to how people spend their money, what their money comes in, what it looks like, all of that." And so when you started the purse, what I love so much about it is that it feels related to that, but it's your voice comes through in this way that it just feels, because I know you now as well, it's just such it's so refreshing and
Thank
so
you.
human and so it's even more down to earth than I
Thank you.
feel like it was, you know, your first kind of addition through,
Yeah.
Money Diaries. I feel like the purse is it and the name of it is amazing. It just feels so perfect. I love it so
Thank you.
much. It's honestly, I'm not a big subscriber of things, but yours is one that I don't ever wanna miss because it's always interesting. It's
Thank you.
never not interesting.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's funny, I have lots of friends who read it and will have been out of touch for a while, and they'll always be like, "Well, I know what you're up to because
Yeah.
I read your newsletter."
Yeah.
It's just a sliver of my life, but okay,
I know,
I'm glad
just
you
a
read it.
portion. I know. Well, listen, I love it. I think
Thank you.
everything that you're doing there is so great, but I do wanna come back to this big change that, you this disruption you decided to make in your life. And I'm curious if you saw it coming. Did you always know that this was in your
No, not at
Yeah.
all, not at all, not at all in my life. I'm never someone who's had, like, a five-year plan at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I even had a boss/editor slash editor friend who one time was like, "You should get, like, a five-year plan." I was like, "I don't know, like, we'll just see where life takes me."
Yeah.
Not that I'm even, like, particularly, I don't know, I always had a hard time imagining what was next, and
Mhm.
never knew if that was, like, my own sort of putting limitations in place so that I wasn't disappointed or because I could never imagine quite the right role.
Mm.
Um, and so a lot of the success that I had at Refinery 29 was in part because I happened to just fall in with some really great mentors at the time. The editorial director who joined shortly after I did had been somebody I knew from my book publishing days, just like randomly. She was like a writer. Like we worked on a book together, so she knew me, and so she was really
Wow.
supportive. And then the editor friend who was giving me a hard time about my 5-year plan, we ended up working really well together and sort of she helped me shape what the vision of the work and money section was, and then I had, like, a really amazing line editor, like, I don't know, there's these people in your life that you meet that you're just, like, so, creatively connected to, and she
Mm.
was very
Mhm.
much one of those people that, like, I would often read my writing after she edited it, and I couldn't see where, like, I ended and she began, and that was such a good feeling.
Mm.
So that was just like it was just a really magical place for a little while where I was able to really like find and hone my voice. Um, and then felt like I wanted to go out and like work for companies that put personal finance and business news more front and center, and that's why CNBC make it, and Fortune were so great, and in a lot of ways, they were wonderful because I had these amazing teams, and, like, we could
Yeah.
geek out on all the stuff that, like, I couldn't geek out on at Refinery because at the end of the day, it was really a fashion and beauty publication.
Yeah.
Um, but when it came to me deciding to leave Fortune and go out on my own, I was feeling a general frustration with the industry, and I've noticed with myself where, like, I hit about a 10-year mark, and I'm, like, in a career that I'm working in, first in book publishing, and then in digital media, where it's, like, just feels like I'm doing the same thing over and over, and there's nothing
Mm.
new to learn, and I was having similar conversations at Fortune that I had had at refinery and similar challenges, and
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm tired, I'm burnt out. It's hard leading young teens through the pandemic. Um,
Mhm.
and I didn't look around media and think, "Oh, that's the next job." A lot
Mm.
of people were like, "You should go and be editor in chief somewhere." And I was like, "But what does that really get me?"
Mm.
Um, but the thing that the person is that I've had all these ideas for years. And in a lot of ways, there isn't there there hasn't been an easier time or a more affordable time in a lot of ways to like stand up your own media company. It's free to have a
Yeah.
Substack. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
like anybody can do it. And I just thought, well, why not me? Why not now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't feel like when I looked across the landscape that anybody was telling these stories the way I wanted them to be told. Even
Mm.
even with like being able to work with writers who I really loved, like we could never quite do what we wanted to do within the limitations of traditional media. So
Yeah.
I just thought I'll do it and we'll see what happens. And
And
then
you've
maybe
done it.
well,
It's really incredible.
thank
When
you.
you hit 10,000 subscribers within a year, basically, right?
Mhm.
I was just amazed. I was amazed at one, the consistency that you put
Yeah.
in that time to really build this out. And along
Yeah.
the way, you've been like, taking time to learn and develop yourself.
Mhm.
It's been such a wonderful thing to see and to see people responding because you really are sharing things that people want to read about and learn about, and you're sharing yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that is something that's really special. And I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about what it feels like to be sharing yourself in this way, because in some ways you're more exposed than you've ever been.
Yeah. It's funny because the reason that I started writing about money in the first place, way back at Refinery 29, I think I published my first personal finance related story in 2014. So it's been a
Mm.
decade, which is crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, was I really didn't like the narrative around millennials and money.
Mm.
Um, and my husband and I had saved a lot of money to buy our first apartment in New York. And so I wrote a very personal story about that experience. And it's funny, I was at was meeting up with some writers this weekend, and one of them, Becca Friedman, was like, "Wait, you wrote that story? Like, doesn't your husband eat a lot of peanut butter sandwiches?" The story is a decade old, and you still remember that
Wow, that's
detail.
incredible.
Um, so I've always been very open with those experiences online, and it was really exciting when that story published to see how it resonated. And it makes some people mad, and some people like it, and some people find it inspiring, and some people find me annoying. And that's fine. Like, that's how it is when you share
Yeah.
personal things, especially around money, because it's complicated and brings up
Mm.
lots of feelings. Um, and so when I started the newsletter, I knew I didn't want it always to be about me because I like to joke that I'm a Brooklyn mom. I'm not that interesting. And I'm not. But I do think that there's something to be said about if I'm going to ask people to be vulnerable with their stories, that I need to also be vulnerable with mine.
Yeah.
And I've also found that it really resonates with readers when I talk
Yeah.
about feelings of jealousy or anxiety or frustrations with myself. People really relate, and I think it makes
Yeah.
people feel better. Um, because I think that sometimes it looks like I've got it all figured out, and I really
Mm.
don't. I really have no idea
Mm.
what I'm doing most days. I'm
Yeah.
not so and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm okay with that because part of the reason I did this was because I really wanted to learn something new and challenge myself, and
Mhm.
certainly have done that.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into that a little bit. So, again, you disrupt your life, you decide to start this
Yeah,
thing. And I think when we do this, there's all these points of growth, but we don't always bring to consciousness all the ways that we've been growing along the way. So I'm
yeah.
curious, what are some of the areas that you feel like you've grown in having done this?
Yeah, I think that in so many it's been it's been really eye-opening on what I know and what I don't know, and it's
Mm.
really pushed me to feel more confident in my skills. Like,
Mm,
like I'm not always good at giving myself credit for like the experience that I have. I kind of like downplay it. Oh,
mhm,
I just write a little newsletter. I'm like, that's
mhm.
so lame. I'm like writing more than a little newsletter these days.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think in that way, it's pushed me sort of to like, I don't know, like buck up a little bit and just be like, you can take up some space in this room. Like you know stuff. You have a point of
Mhm.
view. People are listening. Um, but then I recently brought in a business partner, Erica, and that was really important to me because it it also this year has showed me like how much I miss having a coworker and a
Yeah.
collaborator and how little I know about the business side of things, even though
Mm,
that's very important to me and I want to be very involved and I don't see myself like completely exiting out of that piece of the equation. I think that's always a bit dangerous for small
yeah.
business owners, but just to have somebody that can take the lead and um be a little pushy and a little bossy and a little like almost like a cheerleader of like, look at this amazing thing that she's built and you should buy into it, which is great,
Mm,
which is a hard
yeah.
thing for, like I said, for me to do for myself. Um, so it's been a lot of learning and also like funny things like time management.
Mhm.
Like I
Oh my
think
god, so hard.
I think as excuse me, I think I would thought I would have a lot more time. And the days
Mm,
go so fast. And I
so
always
fast.
have the longest to-do list, and everything always takes so much longer than you think it is. And people
Ugh,
are always like,
yeah.
block out times in your calendar. And like it just doesn't work for me. Like I think as a creative person, like I need to write when I want to write. And it was cute. I was walking my son to school today with his friend and his dad. His dad was asking me how long it takes to write the newsletter. And I was like, well, this week it takes 2.5 hours because that's the amount of a time I have this morning
That
to
you
write.
have. That's right. That makes so much sense.
So, I mean, most of the time it takes a lot longer than that. And really, I
Yeah,
should have given it more. But I also like I've been writing this one in my head for a couple of weeks. So it was really
yeah.
just like actually sitting down to do it. Um, but
That really is I was just talking with, um, a gal about she's starting a coaching business and she's, stepping out, and I was telling her that I'm reading The Artist's Way right now. Have you ever
oh, I really want to read that. No, I know someone else who
Okay.
is. It
I
sounds really
know
cool.
it is, 30 years old. So many people have read it. I've purchased it like 3 times and never
Yeah.
gone through it because it's a 12-week process, and
Yeah.
you have to really commit to it, and she really makes you feel like this is gonna be hard, so every
Yeah.
time I start reading and then I stop doing it. But as I've been going through it, um, I am realizing how much any kind of entrepreneurial venture requires you to step into the artist,
Mm.
and whether your work is creative or not, because you are creating something
Yeah.
from scratch.
Yes.
And so when your work is also creative, it's like a double dose of artistry that you're just kind of in this what it's something that feels so messy all the time, to me at least.
Yes, it does. It is
Like,
so messy. It's like
so messy.
yes, and there is always some annoying task that needs to be done.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Some
"Why?" Like,
pestering thing
yes,
hanging
like
over
some
you.
storm or like,
Oh,
I don't know, I'm
yeah,
just
it's the
like
worst.
paying like I spent Friday doing my quarterly taxes. Like, wow,
Oh,
this is
I
like,
know.
this is not a fun way to spend a Friday afternoon.
I totally yeah, I totally get that. Thankfully, I've outsourced most of that,
Like,
but even still, when they're like,
yeah,
send me your bank statements." For some reason, it's the hardest thing in the world for me to
yeah.
just
No, it
download
doesn't. It's
bank
that I
statement.
know. I know. I had did it on Friday and then my accountant emailed me on Monday and was like, "You were gonna send it?" And I was like, "Oh, that was that unfinished task I forgot about,"
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this constant messiness of and I love what you said, like, when you're like, "I had 2.5 hours to write this article, but really I've been working on it in my head."
Yeah.
I feel that all the time where you never really turn off from the creative process,
No.
and then you need at some point, you get time boxed in and which is why I've been so impressed that you have done this, for over a year now and been so consistent in making it happen. That takes an enormous amount of commitment and
Honestly, I'm impre
determination.
I'm impressed with myself. Like, I never thought that was always the thing that prevented me in a lot of ways from pursuing my own thing is because I never thought I'd be disciplined enough to do it
Yeah.
on my own. Because
Wow.
I liked the comfort of working for a company and having a
Mhm.
boss and not being responsible for everything. I loved
Yeah.
it. I was such a company girl. I always thought
Me
I was gonna be
too.
a company girl. Give
Me
me
too.
some vacation and a good 401(k), and I will work my butt off for you.
That's right. Me
Yeah.
too. I feel that that's part of the reason why I asked you if you saw this coming because I didn't see this coming for me
No.
stepping out and starting grow there. I never wanted to I wasn't even really a climb up the ladder person. I was just a go in, work
Go
hard, and
in.
love what I do, and
Yeah.
just like, and thankfully I was able to climb up the ladder and do all these things. But yeah, it's funny. I was talking to our mutual friend, Fran Hauser. I don't know
Mhm.
the order of the podcast. Maybe she's already been on or not, but we were talking about the she said one of the things she had to learn was to totally mess this up, but basically own her name. And
Yeah.
I while you were talking, it made me think about this because I I feel similarly like sometimes I miss having just I can say I'm the VP at this company
Mhm.
and just being able to say that felt so much more easy than
Yeah.
saying, "I'm the founder of Grow There," right? Or
Yeah.
and I think I wonder if for you,
So much
what
easier.
what has that felt like to really
Yeah.
own that you're doing this without kind of the mantle of another organization?
I I wrote about this last summer because it's something that has really
Mm.
bugged me, and it still does. Like, I haven't completely come to terms with it because I had a great title at Fortune, executive
Yeah.
editor at Fortune.
Ugh,
Like, it just sounds, like, so
beautiful.
important, right? Never felt that important. Like, when I was doing it, the job did not feel important, but the title always felt important. I
Wow.
think that's an important distinction. Um,
Mm,
like, now I think that my job feels more important to me, and I'm more
mm.
proud of what I do, but I have a very hard time articulating it. And
Yeah.
actually, today, before we did this call, I had Erica, my business partner, write me a script of what I'm supposed to say
I love it. Oh
at
my gosh, I feel like
interjections because I'm
yes.
so bad at it. I'm so bad at it. I'm not even actually prepared to read it to you because it happened too quickly
Oh my
before we got
gosh.
on the call. Um, and Eliza Light, uh, who's, uh, who's like a branding expert and has written a number of
Mm.
books.
Yeah.
She
Yeah, oh,
wrote
yeah.
about this idea of last name syndrome and really getting hung up on like who you were before. And
Mm,
so I have a hard time navigating it and I am trying to be better and not just be like, I write a little newsletter or like
mm,
I do work because last summer
mhm.
I was like, I might not have a job, but I am sort of working. Um
I
but I will
know.
still, like, consciously drop like, I worked for CNBC and for Fortune and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
29 in order to, like,
Yep.
provide people context, and, I
I do
really
the
look
same thing.
forward to the day when I don't have to do that anymore.
Mhm. Mm.
Um, Maybe we'll get there. Fingers
Yes.
crossed.
That
We're
day is
pushing for it.
coming. I feel that for you, and I also thank you for saying that because I really do. I struggle with that all the time myself, where I would love to I rattle off all the places I came from to justify where I am now,
Yeah.
or when I tell people about what I do when I'm explaining to them, which I also need a a
Yeah.
much better sales pitch, but I always end up saying something like, "I know it sounds like a fake job, but people pay me to do pay me to do
I
it," you
know.
know? And it's so funny just, like, really owning that and at the same time, Lindsay, as an outsider looking in, I to me, you are so much more, like, you are to me I always think this too when it comes to, like, aging and all of the fucked upness around
Mhm.
aging and how we don't, you know sorry, what am I trying to say? How we think that getting older is this like terrible thing and
Right. Yeah.
everybody is supposed to be youthful and all that. I always think, it's so the opposite. I am more valuable today than
Yeah.
I have ever been. You are more valuable today. Not that your life wasn't valuable when you were
Yeah.
25, but we are so much more valuable to the world. And even more so having done this stepped out of the
Yes.
system to create something. You are truly an artist. You're truly an entrepreneur. And every day the proof is in the pudding that what you have to offer, what you, Lindsay, uniquely have to offer is something that's helpful to the world around you. And I can't wait until everyone just says, "Oh, yeah, of course we know Lindsay Stanberry. Of course she's everything." And I'm like, "Yeah, she
Oh.
is. I know her."
Oh my god, you give the best pep talk. I'm just gonna, like, put this on a voice memo and, like, play it every morning.
Oh my gosh, please do. Please do. This is probably because I have to give myself pep talks every day, so I'm also practiced and, ready for anyone else.
You know it's a mutual feeling that I think that you do amazing and such important work.
Oh,
And,
thanks,
like, so
Lindsay.
genuinely with the way that you do it. Like, I don't know, I I'm not a skeptical person, but I am a person with pretty high standards, and so, like, I'm very careful, like, when I meet people about deciding whether or not I like them.
Yeah, I understand.
But I liked you from the first and, like, really, like, knew I wanted to support you and see where things were
Oh.
going, and it's been really exciting to see what you're building too.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. Well, I feel like we could talk forever and
Probably.
there's so many, right? There's so many things, but I'd love to go into some rapid fire
Yeah,
questions with you if you'd be into it.
let's do it.
Okay. So the first one is fill in the blank. Growth is
Oh, this one's so hard. I think growth is pushing yourself to change, which is really hard, and then allowing yourself to, like, celebrate those successes.
Mm, I love that. What is the very first thing you realized that you're good at or you were good at? And I'm talking like when you were young.
Yeah, I actually writing. When I was in kindergarten or 1st grade, I wrote a story about, a piano teacher, and I got to go to, like, a conference for young writers.
Wow.
Yeah, and then in 5th grade, I my best friend Lauren and I had a newspaper called The Galloping Gossiper, which was hilarious.
That's amazing. Please tell me there is evidence of this. You
I
still
think
have
there's a
some of them.
physical copy somewhere around. And then in 7th grade, I did another writing contest. Um in high school, I was, wrote for the school paper, and
Mm.
I was editor in chief senior year. And I used to write these letters from Lindsay, which were really hilarious. And
Oh
my
my gosh.
senior high school teacher, English teacher, loved it so much that she printed my final letter out and distributed it to everyone at the graduation. It was so funny.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You were
Yeah.
clearly born to do this,
Yeah. I
and you
really
are such an incredible writer.
Oh, thank
So,
you. It's funny, in my 20s, it was really hard because I had a lot of people who said I was bad at writing. I was a bad writer. And so I stopped for a long time.
wow.
So that's why I
Oh,
do feel like
wow.
I was really lucky to land at Refinery and find my voice. And
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's a huge, beautiful story in and of itself. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
wow. Was it people in school? Was it
No, it was after school. Because
wow.
I studied journalism in college fairly successfully, but in book publishing, it was hard. And I had some
Mm,
managers who just didn't like it. And then I actually worked at Martha Stewart, and she had a very distinct voice, and that was
mm,
throughout her publication, and for some reason, I could just never nail it. Drove my boss
mm.
crazy.
Oh my gosh. Well, and this is why, though, you are doing your own
This
thing
is
now
one of the reasons
because
I'm doing my own thing. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I think people who and obviously you were successful, not doing your own thing, but I do think people who any writers that might be listening in, I think that's such a powerful thing you've just said
Yeah.
because, your voice and your way of writing isn't going to resonate with everyone. It's not going to
No,
work in every space.
no.
but keep going and you find your way.
Yeah, and that's I really think the beauty of the internet. Everybody's like, "It's so sad print is dead," and I really love a print magazine, but,
Mm,
I do think that, newsletters and blogs still allow for such interesting writing, and I love to find new and fresh voices out there, and,
yeah.
um, that to me is most interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So much for rapid fire. This is always my fault. What was your first job?
Oh my god, I worked for the Natural History Museum in Cincinnati.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I would go in on Saturday mornings and tell stories to little kids, but the other part of the job was that they had this this giant two-person dinosaur where, like, somebody had to be the front and somebody had to be the back.
Lindsay, that's so good.
What
Were
were
you
you?
the front or the
No,
back?
I was always the back because the Triceratops heavy was too heavy and I couldn't hold it.
That is
Yeah.
so good. Once
Yes.
again, is there any photo evidence of you
No,
as
there's
the back?
no photo evidence of this.
Oh my
None.
god,
Like,
that is so
maybe.
good.
Yeah, I had to be in a parade with this guy because he was big enough, and I remember the whole parade just, like, looking at his, like, saggy drawer, like, I was like, this is a nightmare." For
Oh my
5.25 an
god.
hour, that's how much I
For
was earning.
5.25 how old were you?
I must have been 15 because you had to be 15. So I was
Oh my
15. My mom would
gosh.
drop me off on Saturday mornings and pick me up.
Oh my god.
I mean, I
The
probably
fact
didn't make, like, more than $1,000 doing that job, but it was really fun, except for the
that is
except for the
amazing.
dinosaurs. Yeah,
Except for being the back of the Triceratops.
the back of the
That's
Triceratops. Yeah.
so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so good. Okay, what's something you're trying to learn right now?
I'm studying to become a certified financial planner, so I'm, like, deep in school on top of
That's
everything else.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it's exciting. It's really hard to go back to school as an adult. Um But it's
Yeah.
also it's I don't know, it's also really satisfying, and I really like to learn. I truly think there's, like,
Mhm.
nothing better than when you figure out how to do something and you're like, "I'm smart."
Yes, oh my gosh. I know. I was just thinking today, it's time for me to learn how to do something new.
Mhm.
Just that feeling of
Yeah.
accomplishment. Yeah. Ah, I love that. What's something you're trying to unlearn?
Oh, you know, we had, like, a series of disappointments at home at the end of the summer, like a
Mm,
canceled vacation, we all got COVID and, like, just all these, like, really
mm,
little disappointments, and
mm,
I didn't handle them well, and I'm just trying to,
mm,
like, get better at, like, kind of rolling with it when it doesn't go the way I have planned, and it's really
mm,
hard,
mm.
and I think as a parent, you try to model what you want your kids to become, and so, while I think that, like, feeling your emotions is not a bad thing, I do think that, like, taking things in stride is also important. So, I think I'm
Yeah.
trying to unlearn some, like, old bad behaviors about, like, how I'd manage disappointment.
That's a good one. Okay, tell me a book or a movie that changed your life.
I was thinking about this. Fran Hauser's book, Myth of the Nice Girl,
Myth of a Nice Girl.
has totally changed my life, in part because of our friendship, obviously. She's
Mm,
been such an important mentor to me over the years, and we wouldn't have come together if it hadn't been for that book and, the support we gave her at Refinery.
yeah.
But also the actual book is
Oh,
one
so
that
good.
I go back to a lot and have given to other young women, just really, like, helped me feel more confident in my niceness.
Mm,
Um, so I think that is and also, like, sort of recognize when people aren't capable of that kind of behavior, like, it's been a
yeah.
good litmus test for, like, who I wanna work with and who I don't.
Oh, I love that. I love so much that you said that book. That's so great. When growth feels good, how do you celebrate?
Oh, I'm not always great at celebrating because I always am, like, pushing myself for more,
Mm,
but I'm trying to, like, slow down and do that more. So it's, like, simple things, like having dinner with my husband, like, ordering in instead of cooking or, like,
mhm. Yeah.
um Also sharing it publicly, I think
Mm,
is really important, and I'm trying to get myself to do that more, especially since most of what I do is alone. So, like,
yeah, yeah, you got
bringing in
I know.
outside people to help me celebrate
I
those
love that.
accomplishments.
I love that. I will celebrate with you all day,
Thank
every
you.
day. I'm, like,
Thank
so
you.
into that. When growth feels hard, how do you take care of yourself?
I am a horrible, emotional spender. Like, it is like,
Mm,
it's funny because how much I write about money and care about personal finance, but I am definitely a treat person. When I have a bad
mhm.
day, I need a treat, and actually, when I have a
Yeah.
good day, I need a treat, and, like, I'm always like, "If I do this thing, you get a reward," and I'm so pass it on to my son. I'm like, "We had a bad day. Let's go get a cookie, buy
Oh
some
my
baseball
god.
cards, find some new." He's into, like, different flavored Tic Tacs right now. "Let's go see if there's new Tic Tacs." So,
Oh my gosh.
I'm definitely someone who a little and, like, small stuff, right? Like a cookie
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
coffee. Um, but really, there's nothing in my mind that, like, a Starbucks coffee and cookie can't really fix, at
I love
least
that.
for, like, an hour or 2.
For sure, for sure. You buy yourself some time. That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Okay, last question is when you grow all the way up and you leave this life, what is something that you will congratulate yourself on?
I mean, I think, uh, raising my son is, like, the number one
Mm,
thing. Like, it's more important than any of the professional accomplishment.
mm,
Um, I'm gonna, like, tear up, 'cause he's so
mm,
great, and it's such an important job to me. And then if I'm lucky, then also, like, my writing has helped some people along the way,
yeah.
encouraged, women to ask for a raise or open a 401k or, make some bold financial nude.
Mm. Well, you are an incredible mom. I saw the pictures of the birthday party in the rain this week. It looked great.
It was.
And
It was so much fun. We had so much
oh,
fun.
good. Oh,
Everybody agreed,
good.
best one we've thrown, and it
Oh,
poured.
so fun. Oh, that's the best. It makes it so much more
He said it
adventurous.
the rain was the best part of the party, so
I believe it. And also, no doubt about it, you have already made an impact with your writing and
thank you.
changed lives with it. So I can't wait to see just how much more what more there is
Thank
because I
you.
think there's so many of us out there that are listening, reading, and ready for more because you've been inspiring us for years. So thank you
Thank you.
so much, Lindsay. It's such a privilege to call you friend,
I
and
feel the same.
um, and I'm just so grateful for you being here today. So to
Thank
everyone
you.
listening, what a treat! Please follow the purse. It's the best thing you will read. Like seriously, it's the best thing that comes into my inbox. So
Aw,
okay, Lindsay. Well, thanks so much, and we'll talk soon.
thank you.